She hadn't danced with anyone since her husband died 6 months ago. But when Madonna started singing Crazy for You, the song they danced to at their wedding 40 years earlier, something inside her broke open. What Madonna did when she learned this woman's story stopped 16,000 hearts. It was November 8, 2004, at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Madonna's Re-Invention tour was in full swing, and the arena was packed with 16,000 fans ready for a spectacle. The show had been everything they'd expected: elaborate costumes, explosive choreography, and Madonna's signature ability to command a stage like no one else. But in seat M47, row 12, section 114, sat a woman who wasn't there for the spectacle. Eleanor Chen was 67 years old, and she was there because 6 months ago, her daughter had bought 2 tickets to this concert as an anniversary gift. 2 tickets for Eleanor and her husband Robert to celebrate 40 years of marriage. Robert never made it to the concert. He died of a heart attack on May 3, 2004, while gardening in their backyard in Pasadena. One moment, he was planting tomatoes. The next, he was gone. Just like that. 40 years together, and it ended with a dropped trowel and tomato plants that Eleanor couldn't bear to look at anymore. After Robert died, Eleanor stopped doing almost everything. She stopped cooking the elaborate meals she used to make. She stopped going to her book club. She stopped answering the phone when friends called to check on her. She just existed in their house, surrounded by 40 years of memories, not quite living but not quite ready to give up either. Her daughter Jessica had found the concert tickets in Robert's desk drawer 3 weeks after he died. They were wrapped in tissue paper with a note in Robert's handwriting: "Happy 40th anniversary, Ellie. Let's dance like we did at our wedding. Love, Bobby." Jessica had cried when she found them. Her father had been planning this surprise for months, had saved up money from his pension to afford good seats, had circled the date on the calendar with a red marker. He'd been so excited to take Eleanor to see Madonna, to dance with her to Crazy for You, the song that had been playing when they had their first dance as husband and wife in 1964. Jessica had tried to return the tickets, but then she'd had a different idea. She'd shown up at Eleanor's house with the tickets and said, "Mum, you're going, I'm going with you. Dad would want this." Eleanor had refused at first. The idea of going to a concert, of being around people having fun, of hearing that song without Robert next to her, it felt impossible. It felt like a betrayal somehow, like she'd be admitting that life could continue without him. But Jessica was persistent. "Mum, you haven't left the house in 6 months except for groceries. You're disappearing. Dad wouldn't want this. He'd want you to live." So Eleanor said yes, not because she wanted to go, but because she didn't have the energy to keep refusing. On November 8th, Jessica picked up her mother, and they drove to the Staples Center in near silence. Eleanor wore the dress she'd worn to her 40th anniversary dinner, the one Robert had said made her look like she was 30 again. It felt wrong to wear it without him there to see it. The concert started, and Eleanor sat in her seat like a statue. Everyone around her was standing, dancing, singing along. Jessica kept looking over at her mother, worried, wondering if this had been a terrible idea. Maybe bringing her mother to the place where she and Dad were supposed to celebrate their anniversary was just cruel. But then Madonna started the acoustic section of her show. The lights dimmed, and Madonna sat at a piano alone on stage. The crowd quieted down, sensing something intimate was about to happen. Madonna's fingers touched the keys, and the opening notes of Crazy for You filled the arena. That's when Eleanor stopped breathing for just a moment. This song, their song, the song that had been playing when Robert had pulled her close on their wedding day and whispered, "I'm crazy for you, Ellie, always will be." The song they danced to in their kitchen on random Tuesday nights when Robert would suddenly grab her hand and spin her around while dinner was cooking. The song that had been playing in the car the day they brought Jessica home from the hospital. The song Robert would hum while doing dishes, slightly off-key, making Eleanor laugh. Eleanor stood up slowly, like she was being pulled by invisible strings. Jessica looked at her mother, surprised. Eleanor wasn't looking at the stage. Her eyes were closed, and she was swaying slightly to the music. her hands positioned like she was holding someone, like she was dancing with a partner who wasn't there. Tears started streaming down Eleanor's face, but she kept moving. She was dancing alone in a crowd of 16,000 people, lost in a memory of Robert spinning her around their living room, of his hand on her waist, of his terrible singing voice, trying to match Madonna's. Jessica started crying, watching her mother, but she didn't interrupt. This was something Eleanor needed to do. Around them, other people started noticing the elderly woman dancing by herself, tears running down her face, so completely absorbed in her own world that she seemed unaware anyone else existed. Some people were moved, others felt uncomfortable witnessing such raw grief in public. On stage, Madonna was singing the second verse when she noticed Eleanor. From the stage, Madonna could see a woman in the lower bowl, standing alone while everyone around her was coupled up or dancing in groups. But this woman was dancing like she had a partner, her movements precise, like she was following someone's lead, and she was crying like her heart was breaking. Madonna had been performing for 20 years. She'd seen every kind of fan reaction imaginable, but something about this woman dancing alone stopped her for a moment. Madonna kept singing, but her focus had shifted. She was watching this elderly woman move with such love and such loss that it was visible even from the stage. Madonna made a quick decision. She signaled to her stage manager and pointed toward Eleanor. The stage manager spoke into his radio, and within moments security was making their way through the crowd toward Eleanor's section. Eleanor didn't notice the security guard approaching until he was right next to her. She opened her eyes, suddenly embarrassed, thinking she was being asked to sit down or causing some kind of problem. "Ma'am," the security guard said gently, "Madonna would like to know your story. Would you mind sharing why you're dancing alone?" Eleanor looked confused and overwhelmed. Jessica quickly stepped in, explaining about the anniversary, about Robert's death, about the tickets he'd bought, about how this song was their wedding song. The security guard spoke into his radio, relaying the information. On stage, Madonna was still singing, but her assistant had run up and whispered the story to her. Madonna's eyes filled with tears, but she kept performing, kept singing, waiting. When the song ended, Madonna didn't immediately move on to the next number. She stood at the piano, looking out at the crowd, and when she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "I need to tell you all something," Madonna said. "There's a woman here tonight who lost her husband 6 months ago. He bought tickets to this show to celebrate their 40th anniversary. He wanted to dance with her to Crazy for You because it was their wedding song. He died before he could bring her here." The entire arena went quiet. You could hear people breathing, hear the rustle of clothes, but no one spoke. "She's here tonight anyway," Madonna continued, "and I just watched her dance to that song alone, dancing with a memory of the man she loved for 40 years. And I need you all to understand something. This show, these songs, they're not just entertainment, they're the soundtrack to your lives. They're connected to your first kiss, your wedding day, the moment you fell in love, the moment you said goodbye." Madonna wiped her eyes. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she called out toward Eleanor's section. Jessica helped her mother stand, and Eleanor's voice, shaky and small, somehow carried through the arena. "Eleanor. Eleanor Chen." "Eleanor," Madonna said. "Would you come up here with me, please?" Eleanor froze. Go on stage, in front of 16,000 people. In her grief, in her wrinkled dress, in her mess. But Jessica was gently pushing her forward, and security was creating a path, and somehow Eleanor found herself walking toward the stage, her legs moving automatically because her brain had stopped functioning. When Eleanor climbed the stairs to the stage, Madonna was waiting for her. Up close, Eleanor could see that Madonna was crying too, her makeup smudged, not looking like a pop icon, but just like another woman who understood loss. Madonna took Eleanor's hands in hers. "Tell me about him," Madonna said softly, though the microphone picked it up and broadcast it to everyone. "Tell me about your husband." Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. "His name was Robert," Bobby. We were married for 40 years and 13 days. He planted tomatoes and told terrible jokes and danced with me in the kitchen, even when there was no music playing. Did he know he made you happy? Madonna asked. Every single day, Eleanor said, and then she was sobbing, really sobbing, the kind of crying she hadn't allowed herself to do since the funeral, because she was afraid if she started, she'd never stop. Madonna pulled Eleanor into a hug, this superstar and this grieving widow, holding each other on stage while 16,000 people watched in complete silence. When they pulled apart, Madonna said, "I'm going to sing the song again, and this time you're not going to dance alone." Madonna signaled to her band, and they started Crazy for You from the beginning. But this time Madonna stepped away from the piano and held out her hand to Eleanor. Eleanor took it, confused. "I don't understand." "Bobby can't dance with you tonight," Madonna said. "But you're not going to dance alone. Not here. Not now." Madonna began to lead Eleanor in a slow dance, right there on stage, under the lights, in front of thousands of people. Eleanor followed, her muscle memory taking over, her body remembering how to dance, even though her mind was still catching up. They swayed together as Madonna sang, and Eleanor closed her eyes, and for just a moment, just a few seconds, she let herself imagine it was Robert holding her. Robert's hand on her waist. Robert's terrible singing in her ear. Robert telling her she looked beautiful. Robert being alive. The entire arena was watching this 67-year-old widow dance with Madonna, and there wasn't a dry eye in the building. Strangers were holding each other. Couples were holding each other tighter. People were calling their spouses, their parents, their loved ones, right there in their seats, needing to hear their voices. When the song ended, Madonna hugged Eleanor again and whispered something in her ear that the microphone didn't catch. Eleanor nodded, wiping her tears, and Madonna walked her back to the stage stairs where Jessica was waiting, also crying, to take her mother back to their seats. Before Eleanor left the stage, she turned back to Madonna and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Thank you for dancing with me. Bobby would have loved this." Madonna broke down crying then, right there on stage, not even trying to hide it. "Thank you for reminding all of us what love looks like," she said. The concert continued, but it was different after that. Every song felt more meaningful. Every moment felt more precious. Because 16,000 people had just been reminded that time is finite, that love is everything, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is to dance with them when their partner can't. After the concert, Madonna's team found Eleanor and Jessica in the crowd and brought them backstage. Madonna spent 20 minutes with Eleanor, just talking, not as a superstar to a fan, but as one person to another. Madonna told Eleanor about her own losses, her own griefs, her own understanding that life is beautiful and terrible and brief. Madonna gave Eleanor a signed photo, not of herself, but of Eleanor on stage dancing. "Keep dancing," Madonna wrote on it. "Bobby's always with you." Eleanor kept that photo on her nightstand for the rest of her life. And slowly, very slowly, she started living again. She went back to her book club. She started cooking again. She even went back to the garden and finished planting the tomatoes Robert had started. She never remarried, but she dated a kind man named Frank, who loved to dance and who understood that when Crazy for You played, Eleanor needed a moment to remember. Frank would hold her during that song, and Eleanor would close her eyes and be grateful for Bobby, and grateful for Frank, and grateful that her heart was big enough to hold both. Eleanor lived to be 84 years old. When she died peacefully in her sleep in 2021, Jessica made sure that Crazy for You played at her funeral, and she told the story of the night her mother danced with Madonna, the night her mother learned it was okay to keep living, even when the person you built your life around is gone. Madonna later said in an interview that dancing with Eleanor was one of the most important moments of her career. "We think performing is about being the biggest, the loudest, the most spectacular, but sometimes it's about being present for one person's grief. It's about acknowledging that the person in the crowd isn't just a fan, they're a human being with a story that matters. The video of Madonna dancing with Eleanor has been watched over 30 million times. People share it when they're grieving, when they've lost someone, when they need to be reminded that love doesn't end when someone dies, it just changes shape. The story of Eleanor and Madonna reminds us that grief and love are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other, and that sometimes when we're brave enough to show our grief in public, to dance alone when everyone else has a partner, we give other people permission to grieve too, to love too, to live too. Eleanor's daughter Jessica now volunteers at a grief support center, sharing her mother's story with people who think they'll never feel joy again. She tells them about the night her mother danced on stage with Madonna, about how that one moment of connection helped her mother remember that life, even in grief, can still hold beauty. The lesson isn't that a celebrity gesture cures grief. It doesn't. Eleanor grieved Bobby for the rest of her life. But what Madonna gave Eleanor that night was permission. Permission to keep living. Permission to dance even when your partner is gone. Permission to cry in public and to let strangers witness your love story. And sometimes that permission is everything. If this story of love, loss, and the courage to keep dancing moved you, please subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this with someone who's grieving, someone who needs to be reminded that love never dies, it just transforms. Tell us in the comments about a song that connects you to someone you've lost, and let's honor those memories together. Ring that notification bell for more stories that remind us what it means to be human, to love, and to keep living even when it hurts.